Thanks for joining me. I'm just going to go through a review of some of the principles that we covered in the New Beginner series so that you can maybe do a little practice at home, hopefully before we see each other again. So the first thing that I wanted to make sure that you're keeping in mind as you approach your practice is that you can set your intention, and it will change the nature of the practice, what it means to you, and how it can serve you moving forward. So just take a moment to sit cross-legged with your hands on your knees or your thighs. Close your eyes for a moment. And think about what brought you to the New Beginner series to begin with. Maybe there was something specifically, maybe there was something in your body, maybe a doctor told you that you needed to do this, or maybe there's just something bigger that you're seeking, a greater connection to yourself and to your center, to your spiritual essence. Right? So just hold that. Please bring your hands to Anjali Mudra in front of your heart as a way of just pulling yourself right to your center and holding that intention. Just let your eyes open. Namaste. Thanks for joining me. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to review is your foundation. So any part of you that is touching the floor or bearing any sort of weight in your pose is your foundation. So starting with the hands, what we want to make sure of is that when you have your hands on the floor, you're bearing weight through the four corners of your palms. So the base of the thumb, the outer part of the palm, the mound of the index finger, and the mounds of the middle finger, ring finger, and even pinky finger. So all of that part, the whole periphery of the palm, is really where you're focusing and trying to move the weight up toward the upper part of the palm so that it doesn't rest underneath the wrist and really fatigue the wrist. So as you start to set yourself up in table position with hands right under the shoulders and knees under the hips, make sure that you are pressing forward through that part of the palm so that you're not bearing a lot of weight at the base of the wrist. Okay? So the hands are going to be open, the fingers are spread, your index fingers parallel to one another, and your hands at least at your shoulder distance wide. And then from here we'll move through a few rounds of cat and cow. So the chest moves down gently. As you inhale, you lift your gaze and your sitting bones lift, so the middle of the back just dips down. You exhale, press into your hands and round your back a lot, so you get a big stretch between the shoulder blades. Inhale, lift your gaze to look forward, lift your seat. Exhale and round your back. One more round, inhaling, settling the chest, lifting the gaze, lifting the seat. And one more big exhale as you round the back. Then settling back into table position. You start to find your way into your first downward facing dog. So the toes curled under, you lift your knees and you press your weight back by pressing your hands forward. So lift the knees, press your hands forward and move your hips back. If you have tighter hamstrings, you can keep your knees bent. If you try to straighten your legs with tighter hamstrings, then probably this is going to happen. You'll start to round into the upper back. It just doesn't feel good for the shoulders, for the hands, for the low back. So you really want to try to keep a sense of length through the spine. Your sitting bones lift, your knees bend, and you press your hands forward like you're trying to press the mat out from underneath you. And this would be your downward dog. Now from downward dog, we'll step to your first forward fold. So remember, it doesn't have to be beautiful. Just step your feet forward, little steps. And once you get up to the top of your mat, look at your feet. You want your feet to be parallel, hip distance apart. And you're going to hug your feet toward the midline in order to start to come up to standing. So you hug the feet in, you engage the muscles of the thighs, turn your palms forward, and as you inhale, bring the arms out, take your arms up and overhead, bring your palms together overhead, and slide your hands to your heart. I realize that you can't see the top of my head right now, but you can follow what I'm saying. So you'll bring your hands to prayer position in front of your heart, hug your feet toward the midline. On your next exhale, drop your hands to your sides. Open your palms, inhale and take your arms up and overhead. And as you exhale, we're going to come back into forward fold, so bend your knees and go ahead and come forward. So as you take your forward fold, Uttanasana, you're moving your sitting bones back a little bit and bending the knees to bow forward. If your hands do come comfortably to the floor, then see about maybe the legs straighten a little bit and maybe they don't. But in any case, making the hip creases deep and trying to move the seat back a little bit is going to create a lot more neutrality in the spine, right? So that we don't have a big rounding in the back and we're not trying to force something that the body's not ready for. So here's your forward fold and maybe a half forward fold. So slide the hands up the shins to the knees, inhale and look forward. So see how from here to the top of to the base of my neck, there's it's kind of a neutral spine here. It's more of a straight line rather than a rounding. If my hips come forward, I'm going to be rounding into my back and it's not going to be as good for my back, right? So this half forward fold. Then exhale, bring the hands back to the floor. Now from here, I'm going to have you step back into a lunge. So you slide your hands back alongside of your feet. Step back with your right foot as far as you can. Take it back there into a lunge. So what you're looking for is a right angle in your front leg. Your hands will be approximately in line with your front ankle and you'll be up on the fingertips to provide space between the belly and the front thigh. So you take a lunge here. You try to create that right angle in the front leg. You'll probably be feeling a lot of stretch in the front of the back thigh and the hip flexors. And then from this lunge, we'll step back to downward facing dog. So you keep the hands planted, step your front foot back, reset the foundation of the hands. Index fingers parallel, and then again, bend the knees. Then press the spine long. So sitting bones reach back, press the hands forward. All right, and then from here, we'll step back forward to downward or forward fold. Stepping the feet to the front of the mat. Again, it doesn't have to be all that pretty. You just walk forward, set your feet at parallel and hip distance, turn your palms forward, and make your leg muscles strong now. As you inhale, reach your arms out, still hugging the midline with the feet, and then bring your arms up and overhead. Palms come together and slide to heart center. Take a big inhale. Exhale, release the arms down, open the palms. Inhale, reach your arms up. Exhale, forward fold, bent knees. Inhale, half forward fold, slide the hands up the knees to the shins and lengthen forward. Exhale and fold back in. This time step back, bring your hands alongside of the feet and step back with the left foot into a lunge. So you move it way back there. Try to sit fairly deeply in the front thigh. Make sure you have lateral distance between the back foot and the front foot. If your feet are on a tightrope, it's going to be really hard for you to balance. So see if you can make sure you've got that space. Look back at your back foot, see where it is. Make sure you have lateral space and then bending into the front knee. Again, right angle. Hands are pretty much in line with the ankle. And then we'll step back to downward dog again. So plant the hands, step back, reset your foundation, spread the fingers. Use the length of every finger to press down into the mat as you press your hips up and back. Now from here we're going to shift forward into a plank position, which is essentially a push-up. So you shift the shoulders forward until they're approximately over the wrists. Then from here you set your knees down. Now a lot of us tend to be a little bit too close and the knees are going to come here, and then when you try to lower down, it's really uncomfortable and awkward. So the knees are going to have to be back far enough so that when you lower your hips, your thighs and your torso end up pretty much in a straight line with one another. And then from here you bend the elbows right alongside of the chest and lower down to your belly. So we'll take something called sphinx pose, bring your arms forward, come up onto your elbows, pressing your hands and forearms into the floor. You'll hug your forearms and hands back, roll your shoulder heads back, and pretend that you're trying to drag your body forward through the arms. Your tailbone draws back and down, and if you're not sure how to access that, press your pubis into your mat and bring it forward a little bit as you hug the arms back. So this is a sphinx pose, and then we're going to come down. Now we're going to take the hands back a little further and take a little baby cobra pose. So the position of the hands, the fingers are wide, your hands are a little further, they're not right in close to the body, you want to have them slightly out of the body. And fingertips are, I think I said this in class, they're about a little bit forward of the nipples. Okay, so bring your shoulder heads forward then. Roll the shoulder heads up and then come up. Hug the elbows in close to your sides and then drag your hands isometrically back as you hug the elbows in close to your sides. So I know it's a lot of work. We're not pressing the arms straight and causing any discomfort in the neck or the shoulders. We're bending the elbows and it's a lot of work. And then you lower down. Hands slide back just a little bit and you lift the shoulder heads anytime you're going to be bearing weight. So the shoulders are never lower than the elbows when you start to lift up. Keep the shoulder heads lifted. Press up to your hands and your knees. And then from here, curl your toes under, lift your knees, and with bent knees, come to downward facing dog. And then from your downward facing dog, go ahead and step your feet forward. Come back to forward fold at the top of the mat. Again, feet are about hip distance apart, bend your knees. Hands can come down to your ankles, again, wherever they're comfortable. And then slide the hands up your shins to your knees for a half forward fold. Just look gently forward. Exhale and fold in. Turn your palms forward. Hug your feet toward the midline. Inhale, reach your arms out and up and overhead, straightening the legs as you get to the top. And slide your hands to your heart. And release the arms down. Great. So let's do a few standing poses. So you're going to take a wide stance with the feet. See if you can get my full view here. Step your feet wide, wider than you think. So remember, as if you're going to drop a plumb line from the center of the wrist to the center of the ankle, even wider. All right, good. Now, we're going to turn the right toes open and the left toes in. So bring your left foot a little bit closer toward me. Remember, I'm mirroring you. Bring your left foot a little bit closer toward me and then spin the right foot open 90 degrees from the heel. So as you look at your feet now, and if you side align from the center of your front heel, it would come back and it might graze the back of the heel of your back foot. This just helps to ensure that you've got a little bit of space in the hips and the pelvis as you come into the pose and you don't flatten your pelvis forward. Now take your hands to your hips and turn your hips a little bit more towards your front leg. And then from here we'll come into side angle stretch. So you bring your muscles in and up. Hug it in, muscular energy. Inhale, take your arms up. Exhale, bend into the front knee. You bring your elbow to your knee. And then we turn the chest open. But you can use your elbow to keep your knee in place as you turn your heart more fully open. So the leg is essentially being kept in place by the elbow just right now, and then the body turns away from the leg to create an opening in the hip, right? Then roll your left shoulder back, slide your ears back as if they're on train tracks, and reach your top arm alongside of the ear. So your back leg and your top arm are essentially in line with one another for side angle stretch. Good, and then we'll come on up. And we'll switch sides. So you'll have to bring the right foot slightly forward toward me and then spin open on your left toes. Turn the right toes slightly in. Turn your hips towards your left leg. Hug your feet toward one another. Inhale, take your arms up and overhead. Exhale, bend into the left leg, elbow on the knee. Now you want to make sure that you have a right angle in this front leg. If for some reason your knee ends up going forward, it's probably because your feet are too close together. You don't have wide enough stance. So the back foot just moves back and it changes the angle in the front leg. So elbow on the knee. Turn your chest open. Reach your top arm alongside of the ear. So again, hug your feet toward the midline. Really wrap your left buttock underneath you as your belly tones and lifts. And you turn open as your arm keeps your left leg steadfast, right? So the knee can look over the center of the foot or the pinky toe side of the foot. You just want to keep the knee from rolling in toward the big toe as you reach your arm up and over your head. Good, and then we'll come on up. All right, triangle pose. We'll go back to the first side. You may want to use a block if you happen to have tighter hamstrings. So once again, we'll find the same stance. The right toes turned open, the left toes turned in, and the left foot slightly forward of the back foot, heel to heel alignment. Turn the hips forward toward the front leg, hug your legs in toward one another. Inhale, arms reach up. Exhale, reach out, forward and down with the right hand. Right hand can come to a block behind the ankle. Anywhere you can bear some weight on it, support yourself a little bit. And of course, we're going to start to get pretty decent stretch, inner thigh and hamstrings. Make sure you're keeping the mound of your right big toe down. And then just like in side angle stretch, the body turns away. The hips are actually trying to look down. The chest is trying to open. And then the top arm goes straight up. So you're making a wingspan with your arms. Good. All right, and there's your triangle pose. So go ahead and come on up. And we'll switch sides. Bending into the front knee. Keep the front knee bent. And bring it back to parallel. Now bring your right foot forward, move your left foot back. Turn your left toes open and place the block back behind your left ankle. So again, heel to heel alignment in the legs. Turn your hips forward towards your left leg. Leg muscles totally engaged and strong as they lift up. Take your arms up and overhead. Exhale, reach out, forward and down. Left hand comes to the block. Just take your right hand to your hip for a moment. Just see how this feels. All right, so you want to make sure your knee, again, it's not tracking the big toe. You want the knee to be rolling more out, so it's covering the center of the foot or the pinky toe side of the foot. Now, keeping the low body, trying to face more down, we're going to turn the upper body open. Lift your belly, engage your glutes, engage your hamstrings, engage your thigh muscles. And turn your pose more fully open. So you open the right shoulder, but you also open the left shoulder, right? So you're not letting the left shoulder come forward to compensate because you're trying to open the top arm. Then the arms go up. Now, what you do with your head depends on the position, what your head is doing. You can get freedom for the neck or not. So if your head is forward and then you try to turn to look up, it's not going to feel good. Slide your ears back as if they're on train tracks and you're pressing the center of your head into a headrest. And then turn to look up and see if you've got freedom there. So it might feel good. If it still doesn't feel good, looking forward is fine. Looking down is even fine, right? So there's your triangle pose. And again, to come up, pretend someone's taking a hold of your right wrist and come on up. And release the arm. Excellent. A bend into the front knee. And we'll spin the feet back to parallel. Good. So we'll step the feet in. And we're going to come down into a seated hip opener. Baddha konasana. So sitting up on some height. Just to review, sitting cross-legged on the floor is not always the easiest thing for us. Doesn't always feel that great. And generally, if we have tighter hips, your knees are going to want to come up here, and they're going to be higher than the top of your iliac crest, so the high point of your pelvis here. What you want is your knees to be at lower than or even with that point. So even if you're a very flexy bendy, sitting up on a little bit of height is not a bad idea, because then you get the low back to draw in and up, and all of the curves of the spine support your weight in a way that's a lot easier on the erector spinae muscles alongside the spine. So from here, sitting cross-legged, make sure you're up on enough height. If you find that your knees are higher, then double up your blanket, or even set your blanket up on top of a block so you're up on plenty of height and you can feel that the femurs are descending from the hips. And then from here, we'll bring the feet together. Now, it always changes things, because now you're externally rotating the legs even more, and it's even more challenging. So with the feet together, pressing the four corners of your feet together, take your hands to your ankles, and just gently hug your ankles back toward your body. Roll your shoulder heads up and back, and see how tall you can get your spine. Give your sitting bones a little bit more oomph So sit down into the blanket and see if you can get your spine a little bit taller here. Now, as you sit taller, is it possible to try to descend your thighs toward the floor? It's not a matter of any pressing, it's not aggressive, it's more of a suggestion, right? So I'm sure that we're all feeling at least a little something, something. You could be feeling this outer hip, inner thigh, the whole works. So it's a lot of stretch right there. Now, those of you who are very comfortable here, if your legs do come to the floor or close to it, you might start to come forward and see how that is. You want your upper body and your pelvis to move forward as a unit. And then the upper back, or the upper body rather, will round very gently, but stay in a long arc, almost like a reed. What tends to happen when we're a little bit tight in the hips is the pelvis might actually start to move backward. And your chest comes forward and you start to round into the upper back and the shoulders may creep up on you. If this is what's happening, chances are your pelvis is moving back, and we don't want to try to come forward from that position. So hugging your feet back towards yourself and sitting tall, perfectly fine. Now, if you can come forward and it feels like you can keep a long spine, then just play with it a little bit. Just see how it is to come forward a little bit. Press the feet into one another, continue descending the thighs. Keep the toes spreading anytime you're working with hip opening. You want to really work your feet strongly so that you don't take any hit in the knees. And go ahead and come on up. Okay, great. All right. So now, we'll set up ourselves for a bridge pose. So before we come down on the floor, come down, put your feet about hip distance apart so your heels are fairly close to your buttocks. I suggest using a block between the knees or the thighs in order to just keep the thigh bones parallel, and it also helps if there's any discomfort in the knees coming into the pose. Your arms will go on the floor alongside of your body. Scoot your shoulder blades toward the midline underneath you just a little bit before you start. And then press evenly into the four corners of your feet as you begin to lift your hips. Hug the block with your legs, lifting up, and then you start to move your shoulders toward the midline underneath you. I went ahead and clasped my hands early because that just feels better for me, but you might have to get the shoulders under first and then maybe your hands clasp, maybe they don't. Now, if you can clasp your hands, fine. Otherwise, you could just press your hands down into the floor. Continue to lift your chest up towards your chin without letting your chin drop down toward the chest. So it's the heart proudly lifting up towards your chin while you hold the block. And then go ahead and start to lower down, still holding the block, still holding the block, still holding the block. And then once the hips get down, work the shoulders back out from underneath you. Great, so we'll take the block out from between the thighs. We'll just do a nice little gentle twist before we take Shavasana. So scoot your feet about as wide as your mat, and we'll do a windshield wiper. Drop the knees over to your right. Inhale your knees back up to center and drop them over to your left. Come on back to center. If it would feel particularly good for you, a little symmetrical pose before we take Shavasana. You could take a hold of your knees, just a little gentle roll side to side on the back. And then bringing your feet back to the floor, you lengthen your legs all the way out. Turn the palms up and let your arms rest 8 to 10 inches away from your body. Feet open naturally. Scoot the shoulder blades in toward your spine underneath yourself. And then close your eyes and just let yourself be.